Educational for the Party of Communists USA, January 24th, 2026. In national news, the Trump administration continues dismantling civil rights and New Deal-era reforms, with crackdowns on civil rights and outright intimidation and murder. Minneapolis and multiple cities recently saw large-scale protests that saw tens of thousands in the streets, with businesses shut down in solidarity. In international news, Trump's claims on Greenland are splitting Europe and NATO, while the situation in Gaza remains dire, even as Trump moves to establish a board of peace for the occupation of the region. The Educational takes place from Chapter 1 of Historical Materialism by Maurice Cornforth, Scientific Socialism. The idea of socialism arose and gripped men's minds in modern society because of discontent with the evils of capitalism, and the perception that only by a radical transformation of the entire economic basis of society could these evils be done away with. In the 21st century, this idea continues, despite distortions perpetuated by the capitalist class in media, education, and other forms. In capitalist society, the means of production, the land, factories, mills, mines, transport, belong to the capitalists, and production is carried on for capitalist profit. But the essence of socialism is that the means of production becomes social property, and that, on the basis of social ownership, production is carried on for the benefit and welfare of the whole of society. From its very beginning, capitalism meant a previously undreamed of increase in the powers of producing wealth. But this wealth went to swell the profits of a few, while the mass of the working people were condemned to toil and poverty. To use the new powers of producing wealth, not to enrich the few but to enrich the whole of society, is the aim of socialism. Great new productive forces have been created in modern society, as witness the discoveries of science and the growth of industry. But it becomes yearly more evident that the capitalist owners and managers cannot direct the development and utilization of these forces for the benefit of the majority of the people. Today, this is more evident than ever before. The capitalist monopolies of today subjugate everything to their drive for maximum profit. To keep these profits, they increase the exploitation of the workers and ruin and impoverish the majority of the population. They seek to annex other countries and plunder their resources, like Donald Trump kidnapping a foreign leader to take Venezuelan oil, or Elon Musk for Bolivia's lithium. They strive to militarize the national economy and prepare for and wage wars. And another example, the tariffs that were claimed to be paid by other countries are now having their costs being borne by the American people. The then discovered techniques of atomic energy production and artificial intelligence now, for example, are not being developed and utilized by the capitalist powers for the benefit of the people. On the contrary, they are being developed to produce new weapons to intimidate rival capitalist powers and to try and to overawe those people who have already rid themselves of capitalism. Vast territories have been annexed by the capitalist powers as their colonies, and they have claimed to develop these territories. The people living in them, however, remain in conditions of incredible poverty. Despite all the resources of science, capitalism is unable to even feed masses of people adequately. In the United States of America, the richest capitalist country in the world, surplus food today is going to waste, while half of the population of the United States remains undernourished. If the profit system fails to even distribute existing supplies, no wonder it fails to increase them to meet the needs of the hungry. People have even come to fear new knowledge and high techniques, because they fear that the result of higher technique may only be crisis and unemployment, and that the result of more knowledge may only be the discovery of even more fearful weapons of destruction. The profit system has converted men's highest achievements into threats to their livelihood and very existence. This is the final sign that the system has outlived its time and must be replaced by another. Socialism means that the vast resources of modern techniques are developed and utilized to meet the needs of the people. Production is not carried on for profit, but to satisfy the material and cultural requirements of society. And this is ensured because the means of production all the means of creating wealth are taken out of the control of a capitalist minority whose only concern is for capitalist profit, and they come under the control of the working people themselves. Socialist theory and working class movement. But in order to achieve socialism, we need something more than a general idea of socialism as a better order of society than capitalism. We need to understand what social forces must be organized and what opponents they will have to defeat. The first conceptions of socialism were utopian in character. The first socialists conceived of a better order of society. They gave it form and color and proclaimed it far and wide, a society based on common ownership of the means of production, as an alternative to capitalism. But it remained a mere vision. They could not say how to realize it in practice, because this vision was spun out of the heads of reformers. The utopians could not show that the way to achieve socialism, because they had no conception of the laws of social change and could not point to the real social force capable of creating a new society. The utopians criticized the capitalist order of society as unreasonable and unjust. For them, socialism was based simply on reason and justice, and because they considered that the light of reason belonged equally to all men, they appealed to everyone equally, and first of all to the rulers of society, as being the most influential, to embrace the truth of socialism and put it into practice. Today, utopian socialism sentiments continue through current critiques of pure democracy under the current system. Gorbachev called for universal human values with the capitalists. Social democrats and anarchists decry repressive authoritarian systems, but never seem to specify to whom is repressed. The force capable of achieving socialism is the working class. The capitalist class is bound to resist socialism, because the end of the profit system means the end of the capitalist class. For the working class, on the other hand, socialism means its emancipation from exploitation. Socialism means the end of poverty and unemployment. It means that the workers work for themselves and not for the profit of others. The achievement of socialism depends on the mobilization of the working class in the fight for socialism, and on their overpowering the resistance of the capitalist class. And in this struggle, the working class must seek to unite with itself all those sections, and together they constitute the majority of society, whose interests are infringed upon and who are impoverished and ruined by the greed for profits of the ruling capitalist minority. But more than that, if socialism is to be won, if working class emancipation from capitalism is to be achieved, then the working class movement must become conscious of its socialist aim. But this consciousness does not arise of itself. It does not arise spontaneously. On the contrary, it requires the scientific working out of socialist theory, the introduction of this theory into the working class movement, and the fight for it inside the movement. The very conditions of life of the workers lead them to combine and organize to defend their standards of life from capitalist attack and to improve them. But the trade union struggle to defend and improve working class standards does not get rid of capitalism. On the contrary, so long as working class struggle limits itself to such purely economic aims, it seeks only to gain concessions from capitalism while continuing to accept the existence of the system. And the movement can pass beyond this phase of fighting for no more than reforms within capitalism, only when it equips itself with socialist theory. Only then can it become conscious of its long-term aim of getting rid of capitalism altogether and work out the strategy and tactics of the class struggle for achieving that aim. In the history of the working class movement, there have been leaders whose standpoint went no further than concern for winning concessions from capitalism. This outlook is the root of opportunism in the working class movement, the tendency to seek merely temporary gains for different sections of the working class at the expense of the long-term interests of the whole class. The root of opportunism in the working class movement consists in accepting the spontaneous struggle for reforms as the be-all and end-all of the movement. If socialism is to be achieved, the working class movement must not rely only on the spontaneous development of the mass struggle for better conditions. It must equip itself with socialist theory, with the scientific understanding of capitalism and of the position of the different classes under capitalism, with the scientific understanding that the emancipation of the working class can be achieved only by uniting all forces for the overthrow of capitalism and the establishment of socialism. Hence, without the guiding and organizing force of scientific socialist theory, the working class cannot win victory over capitalism. The union of socialist theory with the mass working class movement is a condition for the advance from capitalism to socialism.